Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Siddharth Lavania, and today we'll be discussing about uh, one of the requirement which is in the privacy domain, and the requirement is to conduct a DPIA, which is a data protection impact assessment. So, first we will try to understand that what exactly the GDPR is, or what are the different data privacy regulations. One of which is GDPR. So, as you can just see that what exactly the GDPR is. So, GDPR is basically what? GDPR is a general data protection regulation. It is a European Union regulation on information privacy in the European and the European Economic Area. The GDPR is an important component of privacy law and human rights law, in particular the Charter of Fundamental Rights of European Union. It also governs the transfer of personal data outside Europe, and these are the basically the now what exactly is the goal of that particular GDPR? So the GDPR goal are to enhance the individual's control. So basically there should be an enhanced control over the data, for the people. Like basically what exactly is the GDPR saying? GDPR is basically a data privacy regulation, right? So data privacy is always concerned about the natural person, like me and you. We both are what? We both are natural person. We both are living individuals. So there the data privacy regulation comes into picture. If I say that the data is about a company, so will you say that the privacy law will be implemented or be applicable to that particular organization? No. Yeah, as per law, companies are artificial person, but they are not natural person. So these, the GDPR is only applicable the uh, to the in natural persons. Now let us first understand what are the general provisions of this. The regulation applies if the data controller. Now, what is a data controller and what is a data processor? This we need to understand, and this is a very important topic for understanding the data privacy. So now exactly what is a data controller and what is a data processor? In a layman term, if I would say, then as per my understanding, the data controller is the one who controls the flow of data, who decides that how exactly the data has to be processed, and rather being the processor. So the processor is the one who processes that particular data, right? If let's say I am the data controller and you are the data processor, so I will tell you that how exactly you have to process that particular data, right? Now it is written over here also in the Wikipedia that an organization that collects information about living people, whether they are in Europe or not, or processor and organization. So this is, the data controller is an organization that collects information about living people. Data controller is collecting the information of the living people, whether they are in Europe or not. And what data processor are doing is that an organization that processes data on behalf of the data controller. So the processor is what? Processor is, collecting, processing, and whatever it is doing with the data, and that is being done with the, on behalf of the data controller. Now example has been given as cloud service provider. Now what are these cloud service providers? Cloud services, uh, like cloud services are what? Cloud services are basically, you must have listened certain examples such as AWS, Google Cloud, you know. So basically, these are what? These are cloud service providers. So basically, they are providing cloud services to a person, and what exactly they are doing. So basically, if I am using a cloud service, such as for an example of me only, and you also, you must have already been using Google Photos. right? Now, what is this Google Photos? These Google Photos or the Google itself is basically, Google Cloud. You must have listened about Google Drive. Oh, where are these files saved? It is saved in a cloud environment, which is given to you by Google. Now, see, I will tell you how this cloud environment looks like. You know, so we will just search this cloud service provider. So basically, what is happening here is that the particular, particularly what is happening here is that the cloud computing, basically what is happening here is that you can see this particular diagram and you can understand the particular applicabilities of that this particular cloud computing and how it particularly works. So basically what happens is that this is the cloud computing where you are able to access the particular data remotely. This is what exactly cloud computing is. So wherever, like let's say I am having a server, right? Now what is a server? Server is a bunch of computers, right? So this basically cloud computing is what? Cloud computing is a bunch of computers, and these this is me, and this is you. So what basically we are doing, if we are accessing the Google Cloud, so we are basically accessing it remotely. And how we are accessing it remotely? They have hardware, okay? Because we don't have hardware, that is why we have hired this particular cloud service provider, and he is able to give us the particular services as per our requirements, right? Now now whenever we talk about GDPR, so how GDPR is playing a role in basically if in the data control and data processor concept. So basically if I am basically giving any data, if I'm using the cloud service provider, let's say I'm using Google Cloud, or let's say I'm using AWS, Adobe Web Services. Now, what is I'm doing? So, I'm having the data, right? I'm the data controller. I'm the one who will decide that how data should be, processed. And the day and the data processor is who? Who is processing that particular data? So if I am hiring a particular cloud service provider, so I'm basically giving that particular service provider some data to be processed. So that way you can understand this particular term. Now, where were we? We were at the data protection impact assessment case study. Now, how exactly the data protection impact assessment has to be done, and what are the different, so basically, this is a particular case study of the data privacy, data protection impact assessment. Now, here we can see that the EU GDPR, which came into force on 25. So basically, we will read all of these things, whatever written is here, and I will keep on explaining these things. So basically, it came into force on 25 May 2018. So 25 May 2018 was the date on which the GDPR came into force. Now replacing the existing data protection framework under the European Data Protection Directive. So basically, it replaced the European data protection directives, and the GDPR came into force. Now the Majesty amended the Data Protection Act 2004 on 25th May 2018 in accordance with the introduction of the GDPR. Now, the DPA complements the GDPR and also implements the law enforcement directives. Therefore, both DPA and GDPR must be read side by side. So, both Data Protection Act and the GDPR, which is General Data Protection Regulation, has to be read side by side. This is what it is saying. Now, it is important to note that the GDPR does not generally require transposition and automatically became law in Gibraltar. Therefore, organizations involved in the processing of personal data need to be aware of the obligations that GDPR or the DPA will impose on them. Now, uh, in another some other session, and where we will discuss the different types of obligations that are there on the organization. Here we are only discussing about the data protection impact assessment. Now, a data protection impact assessment is a procedure. So it is basically what? Whenever someone asks you that what is data protection impact assessment, so it is basically a procedure. Procedure is what? Procedure is basically where, what is a procedure? This we will understand now. What exactly the procedure means? What is procedure? A procedure an established or official way of doing something. So it gives, a official or a defined way to do a particular thing, right? Now, what is this procedure? Now, what exactly this procedure looks like, and why does it basically came into picture? Now, a data protection impact assessment is a procedure designed to assist. So it's basically designed to assist the organizations. You so basically, what can be these organizations be? Right. Now, these organizations can be any organizations such as Geo, Airtel, you know, or let's say Google, AWS, KPMG, Shell, Deloitte, EY, any of these organizations. Now, any of the organization to identify. So basically, what this particular DPIA is telling us about, that the organization can able to identify, right, and minimize the privacy risk of new projects or policies. So basically, what it is saying is that there can be lot of privacy risks in the organization. Now, what are these privacy risks? And how would we identify that particular privacy risk? How we will minimize that particular privacy risk? That is what exactly the DPIA is. Now, what exactly can the privacy risk be? That we have to understand. Now, uh, first we will first understand that what is a risk. After that, we will come to the privacy risks. Now, we will just have a look about what exactly is the risk. What is risk? Risk is the possibility of something bad happening. Now, risk involves uncertainty about the effects and implications of any activity with respect to something that human values. Now, what exactly this risk is? Risk is the possibility that something bad would happen, right? Now, uh, basically, we will have a look about the term. Like, it is already defined in this website also, that the term risk is used in many ways and is given different definitions depending on the field and the context. Common to most definitions of risk is uncertainty and undesirable outcome. So basically, some say that this is the risk is something that is, there is risk is what? Risk is basically, it is a possibility of something bad that can happen. Now, there is a formula in information security that we use for calculating the risk. If you go, then risk is basically likelihood into impact, right? Now, we will also understand this particular term, that is likelihood and impact, right? So basically, this is how it looks like. You can see that we are calculating the risk as per the as per this diagram. So basically, likelihood is what? Likelihood is basically that how probable it is that a particular event will occur. Let's say that in my home there is a there is a shortage of the electricity, right? Now if there is a shortage of the electricity, then the light may go a lot of time. So likelihood would be that it will be, you know the basically the probability of light going or electricity going a lot of time, electricity shutting down is basically more. And what is the impact of that particular thing? Impact is what? Impact is basically uh, you know, let's imagine it in this way that I am a person, and let's say if impact is what? Impact can be financial impact. Like I am losing my money. That is the impact, right? Or I have a reputation in the market, and I am basically, my reputation is being ruined, right? That type of impacts we are talking about here. So basically, impact is normally a negative impact which an organization can have after a particular event has occurred. Or so basically, this is how we calculate the risk, right? So if someone asks you that what is risk, so it is basically a probability of something, you know, it is basically the formula, the possibility of something bad happening, and the formula is likelihood into impact. This way you can particularly remember this particular term, that is risk. Now let us move forward towards the conducting a DPIA. Now conducting a DPIA is not mandatory for all data processing, right? So whenever you are basically conducting a DPIA, so it is not mandatory that every time you have to conduct a DPIA whenever you are processing the data. However, it is required where the data processing is likely to result in a high risk. So basically, if if the data processing is resulting in a high risk to the rights and freedoms of the natural person. So basically, there are some rights to the natural person. Okay. Now, what are my rights as a natural person? I live in India. What are my rights? My right is that I don't want anyone to hamper my privacy. I don't want anyone to see my phone. So some are the fundamental rights which has now been introduced in the right to privacy as per the KS Pottaswamy judgment. Now, what exactly these particular rights and freedoms are? Rights are basically in Hindi we say अधिकार. जैसे मेरा इस घर में रहने का अधिकार है, मेरा राइट टू मूव फ्रीली, मैं फ्रीली कहीं भी जा सकता हूँ. I can speak to anyone wherever I want to. So that is what? That is basically my rights and my freedoms. Now, uh, it if the rights and freedoms of a natural person is being on risk, and it is on high risk, then you might be required to conduct a DPIA. Now, as per Article 35(1) of European General Data Protection Regulation, although undertaking a DPIA is not always compulsory, organizations may find it useful to conduct one as it will ensure processing is GDPR compliant. Note that GDPR set out specific features that must be included in a DPIA, that is given in the Article 35(7) of GDPR or 73(3) of the DPA. Although these features are mandatory, the list is non-exhaustive and flexible. In that, organization may include additional features and adapt the DPIA as appropriate for the type of data used in processing intended. Now, please read the Information Commissioner's guidance, GDPR guidance, data protection impact before attempting to complete this template. So this is basically what this particular case study is suggesting us to read this particular DPIA guidance, which is given by the Information Commissioner's Office. Now, this also we will read if we are having some, you know, doubt regarding of which we have time, right? So this is the Information Commissioner's We will accept all the cookies. Now, what are cookies? Cookies are basically the files that has been downloaded in your computers, right? And so that there can be a monitoring of your activities. What exactly are you surfing or something like that? So basically, it will just install a small file. Now, this is what we have as the Information Commissioner's Office. Now, Information Commissioner's Office has uh, given us a light type of a given us a guidance of how the DPIA has to be conducted. Now, so basically, how much video has been done till now? I don't know. Let it be. Oh, just give me a little break. Uh, how you will basically pause this particular recording, start streaming, stops recording. There is no such option. Okay, let it be. You just read this. I'm just coming in 1 minute. Okay. I will just drink some water and come again. Okay, friends. So here we are. Basically, uh, this is the method how we are basically about to conduct a DPIA. So, firstly, we will identify the need for the DPIA. Now, how you will particularly identify the need for the DPIA? Now, see, as we already discussed, that DPIA is conducted when there is a high risk on rights and freedoms of the natural person or the individuals. Now, how you will identify the need for a DPIA? When you will see basically there might be given. See, it is written also likely to result. So if you begin any type of processing, it is likely to result in a high risk. This means that although you have not yet accessed the actual level of risk, you need to screen for factors that point to the potential for a widespread or serious impact on the individuals. In particular, the UK GDPR says you must do a DPIA if you plan to. Now, the UK GDPR, what it is saying that basically you must do a DPI if you plan to use systematic and extensive profiling. Now, uh, in the UK GDPR, what the GDPR is telling us about? It is telling us about that if there is a high risk on the rights and freedoms of the individuals, then you should conduct a DPIA. Now, particularly, the GDPR has also explained that if you are doing profiling of a particular person, right? If you are using systematic and extensive profiling with significant effects. Now, what exactly the profiling means? What is profiling? Now, we will just have a look on this profiling and how exactly this profiling looks like. So, automated processing of personal data. Profiling is defined in GDPR as any form of automated processing of personal data consisting of use of personal data to evaluate certain personal aspects relating to a natural person. Now, this includes analyzing or predicting aspects concerning that natural person's performance at work, economic situation, health, personal preferences, interests, reliability, behavior, location, or movement. Simply assessing or classifying individuals based on characteristics could be considered profiling with or without predictive purpose. Now, basically, what it is saying is that if there is a automated processing of the personal data, then it will be profiling, right? Now, as per my understanding, this is my understanding of profiling. GDPR profiling definition we will see. So, profiling is defined as any form of automated processing. So, what is automated processing? How exactly would you understand this automated processing? So, automated processing is where, you know, there is some artificial intelligence type of a technology that is being used for processing of that particular data so that it is automatically, like, let's say I am going and I am applying for a job and I have my CV, and in my CV, uh, I have a lack of experience, let's say, in the industry. So the AI will do what? I will send my resume, and the AI that is working for filtering the CVs in the organization might find out that I don't have that much of work experience. So that way, the automated processing, right? Now, automated processing, so it will basically automatically process my particular CV, and it will identify that no, he don't have the experience till now, so let's not basically conduct an interview or get this CV to the interview. This is what exactly happens. Now, this includes analyzing or predicting aspects concerning that natural person's performance at work, economic situation, right? So basically, this is what exactly the profiling is. Profiling is what? Basically, as per my understanding, profiling is when a person knows that how exactly do I look like, what are my likes and dislikes, what is my blood group. So basically, it is a digital avatar of my own personality. That is what exactly profiling, as per my understanding, is. But if they are saying that it is also you use for automated processing, so basically it might be a thing. Now, let us now move forward towards the another aspect, that is if you are processing special category or criminal offense data on a large scale. So basically, if you are processing special category, what are these special category personal information? What is SPI? So SPIs are basically, there is two types of data. First is personally identifiable information, that is PII, and then there is SPI, that is special personal information. Now, SPI is basically the data or the information that is used for the discrimination among people. Like, let's say that if I am black and a person is white, so basically it is what it can be used as a discrimination against both of the people. That way, the you know this is how exactly this particular special category or criminal offenses data on a large scale. So basically, criminal offense data can be related to that if I have committed any crime. Let's say I have not committed it yet, but I am just saying it as an example that if I have committed a murder or something like that, and it has been recorded in the FIR and the police, and as already we have nowadays that you know the central database of that particular information, nowadays India has already launched it. What exactly it is? It is basically the criminal data. And if there is a large scale criminal data that you are processing, right? Or there is a large scale SPI that you are processing, so there is a possibility of a high risk on the rights and freedoms of the individual. Now, systematically monitor publicly accessible places on a large scale, or maybe you are systematically monitoring publicly accessible places on a large scale. Now, what exactly this particular term is telling us about? If you are systematically monitoring public accessible places, now what can be publicly accessible places? See, you must have seen, uh, let's say there is a parking, or let's say it is a, you know, like you have seen malls in Bhopal, we have DB Mall, and in front of DB Mall, we can see that there is a parking where people park. There is a publicly accessible road through which the individuals pass away, right? Like individuals travel. Now, the DB Mall is having a big camera through which the TV mall is able to record the particular area. Now, what it is exactly doing? It is basically capturing the people, and what are the information that can be derived from that particular uh, camera recording. You can basically identify the color of a particular person, or there are so many types of personal information that you can derive from that particular, like the vehicle number and other things. So this way you are basically systematically monitoring the publicly accessible places on a large scale, and if you are doing this, then there can be a high risk, and you should consider the relevant European. Now, so the ICO, that is the Information Commissioner's Office, has basically given you some other, conditions, or let's say circumstances on which you should conduct a DPIA. That is, if you are using using a innovative technology which is not yet come into the market, and you are using it, or if you are using for profiling, as we already discussed, profile individuals on a large scale, process biometric information. If you're processing biometric information, is what? Biometric is basically your thumb. Now, match data or combine data sets from different sources, collect personal data from a source other than the individual without providing them with a privacy notice. So you are not providing any privacy notice to that particular person, and you are collecting the personal data. You are tracking the individual location or behavior. So you are basically tracking the location of my, like I'm living in here in the Madhya Pradesh or somewhere. So basically, if you are tracking that particular information of the individuals, then you have to conduct a DPIA. If you are targeting if you are using profiling children's, basically children of the age of below 18 years, and basically you are profiling them so that you can target them for the marketing purposes or online services you wanted to give to them, or process data that might endanger the individual's physical health or safety in the event of a security breach, right? Now, how do we carry this particular DPIA? This we will understand now. So basically, DPIA is what? DPIA is data protection impact assessment. Now, by the word also we can understand that it is basically telling us about an assessment. Assessment is what? Assessment is where we are calculating a particular thing. Now, here what we are calculating? We are calculating the impact of that particular, data protection. So basically, here the process is given such as the identification, identify the need for a DPIA. Here you will identify that whether we particularly need the DPIA or not. So how you will identify that there is a need for a DPIA? If you are basically, as we already discussed, that if you are collecting and processing a large amount of sensitive personal information, or if you are basically uh, accessing publicly accessible in place, this you are monitoring, or let's say that you are you know processing, you are basically profiling, doing profiling, and automated decisions are being taken in the organization. So that way this particular identification, the identification of the need for the DPIA happens, right? Now let's move forward towards the describing the processing. Now when you have identified that yes, we need a DPIA, right? Now what you will do? Now you will basically describe the processing. What is basically a description of processing? Now let's say that like if the organization is collecting the data, uh, like Facebook is collecting what? Facebook is collecting my name, Facebook is collecting my email ID, Facebook is collecting my other information just as my date of birth, my age, my everything, a lot of things it is collecting, photos and everything. So the question is that whenever you're conducting a DPI, you should first identify the need of the DPI and then describe the processing. Now, processing has to be described as per the how it is basically being processed. Now, this we will understand by an example. Description of processing, personal, personal data. Any operation performed on this personal data. Processing personal data refers to any operation performed on this personal data, whether those operations are automated or not. So any operation that has been performed, so this we will just copy and we will again Google, because Google I think is a more perfect search engine. Here you will search this particular description. So processing basically means what exactly the processing means. Now, here we want to basically have a description on how the process, the description of the processing. Now, what exactly the processing means is using the personal data in any way. If you are using that personal data in any way, then it is basically what is called as the processing, including collecting. Now, if you are collecting that particular information, so that is also a processing, right? Collecting is what, like if Facebook is collecting my data, so it is basically taking the data from me. That is the collection process, right? Storing, where the person or the individual or the company is storing that particular personal data, right? Retrieving, consulting, disclosing, or sharing with someone else. So basically, we will have a description where we will be having a description of that processing of personal data, right? That how exactly are you collecting the personal data, where you are storing, how you are storing that personal data, how you are basically transferring it to the third parties, or how you are disclosing it whenever it is or for business need, and how you are erasing that particular information, right? Or destroying personal data. Although data protection law does not apply where there is where this is done for purely personal or household activities. Any information that relates to the identified or identifiable living individual. Basically, this is how exactly the data protection processing is described as. Now, let us move forward towards considering the consultation, where you will be consulting, you will be taking the consultation with a professional for how exactly this has to be done, right? After that, you will assess the necessity. And proportionality, after the we will identify the and assess the risks. Identify and assessing the risk, assessing the necessity and proportionality is basically concerned with the how much necessary is it particularly, right? Necessity and proportionality. Necessity
According
shall
to
be justified
European
on
Data
basis
Protection
of
Supervisor, European
evidence.
Union, necessity shall be justified on the basis of objective evidence and is the first step before assessing the proportionality of the limitation. Necessity is also fundamental.
Now, what exactly is the necessity? This we will understand. So, necessity is a fundamental principle when assessing. So, necessity in the layman terms, what we can understand that it is very necessary. बहुत ज़रूरी चीज़ है, बहुत ज़रूरी काम है. So, necessity is a fundamental principle when assessing the restrictions of fundamental rights, such as the right to protection of personal data. Right to protection of personal data. This is particularly what? This is basically a necessity, right? It is the right to protection of personal data. According to case law, because of the role the processing of personal data entails for a series of fundamental rights, the limiting of the fundamental right to the protection of personal data must be strictly necessary. Right? Now, necessity shall be justified on the basis of objective evidence and is the first step before assessing the proportionality of the limitation. Necessity is also fundamental when assessing the lawfulness of the processing of personal data. Right? Now we will discuss another in the next class or the next session. Okay, thank you everyone. We will meet after 10 minutes.